The lights in the pediatric wing were too bright for nighttime. They hummed overhead in long white strips, washing the hallway in a flat, unforgiving glow that made every scuff on the linoleum and every fingerprint on the glass doors stand out. Daniel Reyes shifted his daughter higher on his hip and moved out of the stream of nurses. Mia was light, all thin limbs and sleepy warmth, her head resting in the notch of his shoulder. Her small hand curled in the collar of his jacket knuckles, pressed to his neck. "Is it still raining?" she mumbled against his shirt. "A little," he said. "Seattle never gets tired of itself." At the end of the corridor, past the waiting area, he could see a slice of the city through the hospital's glass wall, a smear of red and white lights blurred by water. It was late enough that the roads looked half empty, late enough that he was already counting how few hours of sleep he would get before his alarm went off again. They had finished in the pediatric cardiology clinic half an hour earlier. The doctor had smiled and told Mia she was doing great. The words were supposed to feel solid. They still felt fragile in his hands. He adjusted the backpack on his other shoulder, the one stuffed with coloring books, snacks, and a small, patched-up teddy bear Mia insisted on bringing everywhere. The paper bracelet around her wrist crinkled when she squeezed his neck. The hospital intercom clicked, let out a hiss of static, and then a voice filled the ceiling. Code red, O-negative blood needed immediately. Pediatric emergency. All available donors and compatible staff, please report to the blood center on level 2. The hallway did not exactly go silent, but something in it dropped. The rhythm changed. Footsteps sped up. A nurse who had been laughing with another at the station cut herself off mid-sentence and reached for the phone. Someone down the hall cursed under their breath. O-negative. The words hit in the center of Daniel's chest. His fingers tightened on Mia without meaning to, as if he could hold her closer than bone and skin allowed. She felt it and lifted her head, brown hair rubbing against his jaw. Her eyes were wide, still soft with sleep, but sharp enough to catch the tone of the room. "What is it?" she asked. "Emergency call," he said. His voice came out rougher than he planned. "They need a special kind of blood tonight." Mia blinked once, then twice. He watched the tiny line appear between her brows, the same line Elena used to have when she was thinking. "Like yours," she said. He did not remember telling her that, not in so many words. But kids listened when you thought they were playing. They listened when you muttered at forms, and clinic staff when a nurse said, "Well, at least O-negative is helpful everywhere." Daniel hesitated. The intercom repeated the message, the same calm voice, the same urgency underneath. "Yeah," he said quietly, "like mine." They were standing near the intersection of two corridors, one leading back toward the elevators, the other toward the main lobby. A gurney rolled past them, rattling a child under blankets, breathing through an oxygen mask. A woman not yet 20 followed with swollen eyes and a crumpled tissue, her steps catching on each tile. Mia watched them vanish around the corner. "Is somebody going to die?" she whispered. Her fingers tightened around his collar. Her chest rose against his ribs in fast, small breaths. He could feel her heart through the thin fabric, that quick, steady flutter that had never stopped sounding like a miracle. "Somebody is really sick," he said, "and the doctors are doing everything they can." "Then they need help," she said, as if it was an equation. "Right?" He did not answer. His gaze had drifted to the sign above the stairwell. White letters on blue plastic. Blood Center Level 2. An arrow pointed down the hall and out of sight. The intercom clicked off. For a second, all he heard was the buzz of the lights and the squeak of shoes and the distant ping of an elevator. Then another sound cut through it. High heels. Thin, sharp taps on linoleum, too quick to be casual. Mia felt the change in his body again and turned her head. He followed her eyes. A woman came into the corridor from the direction of the emergency department. Moving so fast, one of the residents had to flatten himself against the wall to keep from being run over. Her navy coat was half-buttoned, hair pulled back in a knot that had stopped pretending to be neat an hour ago. One sleeve of her white blouse was stained pink at the cuff, where she had wiped at her wrist and missed. She was talking to a nurse and not really breathing between words. "They told me she was crashing, that you lost her pressure. Someone said there was a match. Is that real, or were they just trying to keep me from losing my mind in the waiting room?" The nurse opened her mouth, then spotted the charge doctor further down and motioned the woman forward. "Ms. Lowell, come with me. Dr. Henley can update you. We are doing everything possible." Lowell? The name landed in Daniel's stomach like a stone dropped in water. He knew it before she turned her head, before the harsh fluorescent light hit the side of her face, before he saw the profile that had been on company newsletters, industry magazines, investor decks. Catherine Lowell, founder and chief executive of Lowell Dynamics, his employer. Her heels skidded once on the smooth floor, leaving a faint streak where the rubber met polish. She caught herself, barely broke stride. The nurse reached for her elbow and was shaken off without thought. They passed within a few steps of where Daniel stood. She did not see him at first. Her eyes were fixed on something only she could see. Some picture of a hospital bed or a monitor screen she was trying to outrun. Then Mia shifted, the backpack creaked, and Catherine's gaze snapped sideways. For a moment, there was nothing in her face but raw fear. No boardroom steel, no practiced neutrality. Just a mother pupils, blown wide, lips parted like she had forgotten how to breathe. Her stare flicked over Daniel and his uniform, the way it had 100 times in the lobby of the Lowell Dynamics building. Dark blue shirt, name patch over the pocket. Reyes. The standard issue badge clipped to his belt. If she recognized him, it did not show in the rush. Her eyes slid past him the way they always did, up until they dropped to Mia's wrist, to the hospital bracelet, to the little paper band that marked his daughter as a patient too. Something flickered in her expression, then something quick and messy, but it was gone as fast as it came. "Please," she said to the nurse, again hoarse, "just tell me she is still here." They turned the corner together. The echo of her heels, that sharp, uneven rhythm, faded down the hall. Mia leaned back to see where they had gone, then looked up at him. Her face was pale in the white light. "Daddy," she said, careful as if she was trying not to wake someone. "If that was me in there, and they needed the special blood, you would give it right." He swallowed. His mouth tasted like old coffee and antiseptic. "In a second," he said. "Then you should help," she said. No drama, no pressure, just a statement like saying the sky outside was dark or the floor under their feet was cold. A transport orderly pushed an empty bassinet past them with one hand, humming under his breath. Somewhere behind a closed door, a baby wailed, thin and furious. The smell of disinfectant swirled with something heavier, the metallic tang of blood that had not yet been mopped away. Daniel shifted Mia off his hip and set her gently on the nearest plastic chair. It was the color of faded mustard bolted to the wall. "Sit here for a second," he said. "Hold on to Bear so he does not get scared." Mia hugged the teddy bear from the backpack, eyes never leaving his face. "Where are you going?" she asked. He glanced down the corridor toward the sign for the blood center and the arrow that pointed the way. "To see if I can help," he said. As he turned toward the sign for the blood center, as the hospital hallway seemed to thin around him, and the long white lights above blurred into a single pale streak. The smell of antiseptic shifted in his mind into something else, something older. Burnt coffee, laundry soap, rain on cold concrete. The day had started in the dark. The alarm on his phone buzzed at 4:30, a narrow slice of sound in the small apartment. Daniel silenced it with one thumb before it could reach the second vibration. The room was still, the kind of still that carried every breath. He lay there for a moment, eyes open, watching the faint orange glow of the street lamp filter through the blinds. The ceiling above him was cracked in one corner. He had traced the line of that crack more mornings than he could count, following it from wall to light fixture, and back again the way other people read headlines. Mia exhaled in the twin bed across from his. The beds were close enough that he could have reached out and touched her foot if he wanted. She slept tangled in the blanket hair across her face, both hands wrapped around the stuffed bear that had survived more washes than the fabric was meant for. He swung his legs over the side of the mattress and sat up slowly. The springs creaked once under his weight. He waited. Mia did not stir. The floor was cold under his feet. He found his way to the tiny kitchen by memory. The light over the stove flickered when he turned it on. The coffee maker on the counter was the same one he and Elena had chosen in a department store aisle years back, when models had seemed like interesting differences rather than math problems about price and durability. He measured grounds with the scoop and set the machine to drip. The smell spread into the room, sharp and familiar. He took a chipped mug from the cabinet, the one Mia had painted at a birthday party, for a kid whose name he could no longer remember. The letters of his name were crooked and bright. On the narrow table by the window, a stack of envelopes waited in a lopsided pile. He placed a hand on them as he sat down, the edges rough under his palm. Hospital logos, collection agencies, notices that used words like urgent in friendly fonts and red ink. He slid one from the middle, opened it, scanned the numbers. The amount was not new. The due date was closer. He let out a breath between his teeth and laid the paper back on the stack. The coffee machine clicked. He poured, added a packet of sugar, because Elena had always said the first cup should be kind. Steam rose in a small, steady column. He wrapped both hands around the mug for the heat and looked at the fridge door. A drawing of a heart was held there by a magnet. Mia had drawn it with a red crayon, the shape slightly lopsided. Inside it, she had written her own name, and his one on each side letters pressed hard into the paper. Beside the drawing under a clear magnet was a folded copy of her cardiology appointment schedule, black print on white paper. Every month, a square highlighted. He traced one finger over the current date without touching it. The bedroom door creaked when he nudged it with his shoulder. Morning had seeped in a little more. He could make out Mia's face clearly now, relaxed in sleep, mouth open just enough that a soft whistle came with each breath. He sat on the edge of her bed and brushed her hair back, careful not to wake her until he had to. "Mia," he murmured, "Son's thinking about getting up. We should beat it." She frowned in her sleep and burrowed deeper into the pillow. "5 more minutes," she said, the words slurred together. He smiled despite the tightness in his chest. "If we give the son 5 more minutes, it will get cocky," he said. "Come on, Dr. Chen wants to listen to that superstar heart of yours today." Her eyes opened at the word heart. It always worked. Worry and pride had tangled those letters together in her mind. "Do I get a sticker?" she asked. "If you breathe when he tells you to, and do not kick him in the kneecap this time, you get 2. "I did not kick him," she said. "My foot slipped." His kneecap disagreed. She sat up, hair pointing in every direction. He reached over and tapped 2 fingers lightly against her chest, just to the left. "Heartbeat check," he said. "You still in there?" She pressed her own hand there and closed her eyes for a second. "Still here," she said. They dressed in the dim light. Her sneakers were outgrown but clean. His work pants had a stain on one knee that no amount of scrubbing had ever fully erased. He tucked his Lowell Dynamics uniform shirt into the waistband and buttoned it up to the collar. In the bathroom, he leaned toward the mirror. The glass was spotted with toothpaste and water. His reflection stared back older than he sometimes felt inside. The gray at his temples had not been there when Mia was born. He ran a hand over his jaw and glanced at the draining rack. Under a small towel sat a stethoscope toy, plastic and cheap purple tubing, curved into a loose circle. Mia had left it there after playing doctor with her dolls. He picked it up, pressed the round end to his own chest for a second, then smiled at himself in the mirror and set it back. Mia bounced into the doorway, swinging her backpack by one strap. "Can I have cereal?" she asked. Cereal is a luxury reserved for those who brush their teeth without trying to eat the toothpaste. "I do not eat it." "You chew it with enthusiasm." She giggled and skipped away. They moved through the routine that had become muscle memory. Cereal in a bowl with more milk than he liked because she insisted. A banana cut into careful slices. A quick check of her inhaler and the worn insurance card that did less than it promised. He packed her backpack with a snack for daycare, the bear a crumpled coloring book and the appointment reminder. His own bag held a spare shirt, a cheap lunch, and a folded resume that had not been updated in years. Near the door, a narrow shelf held 3 framed photos. One of Mia as a toddler, cheeks round frosting on her nose. One of the 3 of them on a beach, Elena's arm thrown up in a carefree wave, the sun making her hair look like it held its own light. He paused at that one eyes on Elena's face. The curve of her mouth, the way she leaned into him. He could still hear her laugh in the kitchen when he came home complaining about some minor inconvenience at work. "You have 2 working legs and a kid who thinks you hung the moon," she had said once, drying her hands on a dish towel. "That is a pretty good baseline." He touched the edge of the frame with 2 fingers, then lifted the car keys, then remembered he no longer had a car. Habit. He grabbed their bus passes instead. Mia was waiting by the door, backpack on bare, under one arm, jacket unzipped. "Zipper," he said. She rolled her eyes but lifted her chin so he could pull it up. As he did, he checked the small white pill bottle in the inside pocket, more by feel than by sight. Full enough for now. Outside, the air was damp and cold. The sidewalk shone under the streetlights, still slick from the rain that had not fully decided to stop. Clouds hung low over the block, hemming them in. They walked to the bus stop at the corner. The city was waking slowly. A delivery truck rumbled by. A cyclist in a reflective vest glided through a red light with the casual arrogance of someone who did it every morning. Mia trotted beside him, jumping over cracks in the concrete. At one of them, she stopped and looked down. "If you step on the line," she said, "you get bad luck." "Pretty sure my luck is already working overtime," he said. "Then we cannot risk more." She hopped far enough to clear 2 cracks in one leap. He watched her small body stretch the sleeves of her jacket, riding up to show the thin wrists beneath. The bracelet of friendship string she had made at daycare brushed against her skin with each movement. The bus growled up to the curb, kneeling with a soft hiss. They climbed aboard, found a pair of seats near the middle. Daniel slid the backpack onto his lap and rested his hand on it. Mia pressed her face to the window. Seattle passed by in wet smears of neon and brick. The sky shifted from black to deep blue, then to something almost gray. Coffee shops lit their signs. People in hoodies and suits climbed onto other buses, shoulders hunched against the cold. At each stop, the bus filled more. A nurse in scrubs nodded at him as she sat across the aisle, badge from Harborview clipped to her pocket. A man in a reflective orange jacket snored softly against the glass. Lowell Dynamics rose from the street like a block of light and glass. The building's front face was almost entirely windows framed in steel, reflecting the dull sky back at itself. The company logo stretched across the top in white letters, clean and confident. Mia tilted her head back to see the full height as they stepped off the bus. "It looks like a giant phone," she said. He followed her gaze. The building did look like something meant to fit in a hand scaled up until it could crush you if it fell. "Something like that," he said. He adjusted his shirt, felt the familiar pull of the name patch over his heart, and took Mia's hand as they walked toward the shining glass doors. The glass doors of Lowell Dynamics opened, with a soft suction sound, like the building was taking a breath. Warm air rolled out to meet the damp chill of the street, and wrapped around them as they stepped inside. The lobby was big enough to swallow their whole apartment 3 times over. Polished stone floor, 2-story windows that looked out on the city and reflected it back in cleaner lines. Screens on the walls pulsed with slow animations of sleek machines folding and unfolding the company logo, fading in and out at the edges. Mia stopped just past the threshold and tipped her head back. "It is brighter than school," she said. "Costs more than your school, too," Daniel said under his breath. He guided her across the lobby toward the sign that read, "Child Care Center," with a cheerful arrow. Lowell Dynamics paid a portion of the cost if you were on staff, even if you pushed a mop instead of designing robots. It was the main reason he had not quit when the night shifts got heavy. The Child Care Center door was painted a bright yellow. Crayon drawings and construction paper hearts covered the bulletin board beside it, some curling at the edges where the tape had given up. Inside, voices overlapped in a warm, chaotic hum. A teacher with her hair in a scarf greeted Mia by name. "Morning, superstar," she said, ready to educate these heathens on proper crayon technique. Mia grinned and slipped her hand from his. "Daddy has to go clean the giant phone," she informed the teacher. Daniel touched 2 fingers lightly to her shoulder. "I will be back early today," he told her. "Big appointment with Dr. Chen, remember?" "Big appointment, 2 stickers," she said, nodding. He signed her in, wrote down the pickup time, and lingered just long enough to see her drop to the rug and join a circle of kids building a crooked tower out of foam blocks. In the employee corridor, the air changed. The glossy lobby scent of coffee and perfume gave way to something sharper. Cleaning chemicals, dust, old ductwork. He pushed open the door to the facility's locker room with his shoulder. Metal lockers lined the walls in 2 rows, some with stickers, some with names scratched into the paint. A radio played from somewhere low enough that the words blurred. "Morning, Reyes," called out Malik, another janitor from the bench. He was lacing his boots uniform shirt half tucked in. "Morning," Daniel said. He went to his locker, spun the combination, and pulled the door open. Inside, his world had been compressed into neat folds. Spare shirt, roll of quarters, a photograph of Mia on the first day of kindergarten backpack, almost larger than she was. He pinned his ID badge to his chest, took the ring of keys and closed the locker with a quiet click. When he turned, the large schedule board caught his eye. Someone had circled Thursday in red, and next to it in block letters written, "Exec Meeting Day." "She is in one of those moods," Malik said, following his gaze. "I heard. Investors in town, everything has to shine." "When does anything not have to shine?" Daniel said. Malik laughed and slapped him on the shoulder. They collected their carts in the supply room, metal frames with plastic shelves, bottles lined up in a rainbow of labels, glass cleaner, disinfectant, something that smelled like fake citrus. Daniel moved automatically, checking levels, refilling a spray bottle here, rolling a fresh trash bag there. His hands remembered before his mind woke all the way. He wheeled his cart out into the hallway. The wheels squeaked on the threshold. The lobby was quieter at that hour. A receptionist arranged stacks of brochures at the front desk. Security stood by the entrance with arms folded and a practiced scan in his eyes. Outside, the glass rain streaked down the windows in thin, hesitant lines. Daniel started with the doors, wiping each pane with careful strokes until the edges of the city sharpened. His reflection appeared and disappeared as he moved a faint double-layered over downtown. He caught sight of himself when the cloth passed over the company name etched into the glass. Lowell Dynamics. The letters floated over his face, cutting it into segments. His eyes, his mouth, his name patch. For half a breath, he saw himself as a stranger might. A man with a rag in his hand shirt tucked in too neatly shoulders, set in a way that looked stubborn even at rest. Reyes. The security guard approached, smoothing his tie. His name tag read J. Mendel in small print. "Morning," Daniel said. "You are early." "So are you," Mendel replied. He glanced toward the far end of the lobby, where two elevators waited behind steel doors. "She is in already." At 7:15, car dropped her at the curb at 7 on the dot. She walked in like she had a stopwatch going in her head. Mendel leaned closer. "Do yourself a favor. Keep the cart away from that elevator bank." Daniel nodded. "I am just finishing the windows." "You know how it is," Mendel said with a shrug that did not quite reach his face. "She sees clutter, she sees loss of control." The guard walked back to his post. Daniel turned to the next window. His cloth squeaked in the top corner, where a fingerprint had dried. Halfway through the row, the young guy from IT, Evan, stopped near his cart with a cardboard tray of coffee cups. "Machine on 7 is jammed again," Evan said. "You think you could look at it later?" "You have a whole department of people who understand machines," Daniel said. "Yeah, but none of them care if I get my caffeine on time." Evan shifted the tray, careful not to spill. "You saved my life last time." Pretty sure that was hyperbole. "My heart did a thing when I could not get my soda, felt medical." Daniel shook his head, but a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I will check it when I make the rounds," he said. "You are a hero." Evan walked on, calling a greeting to the receptionist. She laughed too loud at something he said. The normal noises of morning at a tech company swelled and ebbed. Phone screens lit up, laptops opened, sneakers squeaked on the stone. Daniel finished the last pane and turned to the floor. He plugged in the buffer and guided it across the marble with steady hands. The machine hummed and tugged against his grip, like it wanted to run ahead. He moved with it in slow, even passes, laying a shine down row by row. He lost track of time inside the rhythm. Turn, step, hum. The edge of the lobby near the executive elevators gleamed when he reached it. He pulled the machine back, leaving a narrow strip undone while he repositioned his cart. He did not hear her steps at first over the motor. Only when he switched the buffer off did the lobby sound reassert itself in layers. Conversations, phones, the distant hiss of the espresso machine in the cafe. And under that sharp and precise, the click of heels on stone. He turned. Catherine Lowell was 10 paces away, walking straight down the center of the lobby, as if the building were a hallway in her own house. Close up, she looked exactly like her photos, and not at all like them. The suit was as immaculate as always, dark fabric cut to her frame. The heels high, but not impractical. Her hair was pulled back in a smooth twist. Her face, though held attention, the pose shots never showed a tightness at the corners of her mouth. A focus that made the air around her feel thinner. Two executives trailed her with tablets in hand. A third hurried to catch up, breath already short. She was looking at the elevator display as she walked at some number ticking down from 10. She did not see the cart until she was 3 steps away. "What is this?" She did not raise her voice, but the words snapped the space in front of her like a rope pulled tight. The nearby conversations thinned and then faded. Daniel followed her gaze to the cart. It stood near the executive elevators, angled slightly across the path. There was enough room to pass if you did not mind walking near the wall. It looked different from where she stood. Bigger somehow. Less like a tool, more like an obstacle. "I am sorry, ma'am," he said. "I will move it." He reached for the handle. Catherine took one more step and stopped within arm's reach. Her eyes flicked over the bottles on the cart, the open drawer with folded rags, the coiled cord of the buffer. Her jaw clenched once. "This is the main access for my team," she said. "For investors, for clients, and you are leaving equipment scattered in front of it." "It is just for a minute," he said. "I am almost done. I did not mean to block anything." She looked at him, then really looked, and something in her gaze sharpened. It moved from his face to his uniform, to the scuff on his boot, back up to the name on his badge. "If this is what passes for attention to detail on this floor," she said, "it explains a lot." Heat rose along the back of his neck. He wrapped his hand tighter around the cart handle. "I apologize," he said. "I will clear it." "You should not have put it here in the first place," she said. She turned her head toward the security desk. "Mendel." The guard straightened. "Yes, Ms. Lowell. Who supervises facilities on days like this?" "That would be Greg Torres, ma'am." "I want him in my office before lunch," she said. "With a report, pictures times names. I am done walking into this." Mendel swallowed and nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Daniel could feel eyes on him now. The receptionist, the IT kid, a cluster of junior staff near the cafe. No one spoke. A few shifted their weight from one foot to the other, as if their bodies wanted to move, but did not know where permission lived. He pulled the cart closer to himself, careful not to jostle the bottles. The plastic wheels squealed the sound too loud. "I am sorry for the inconvenience," he said. His voice stayed level by effort alone. "It will not happen again." Catherine studied him for a second longer. There was no recognition in her eyes. No sign that she had seen him every morning for 2 years. He was just a uniform in the wrong place, stays at the wrong time. "See that it does not," she said. She stepped around the space where the cart had been and approached the elevator. As she pressed the call button, her reflection joined his in the polished doors for a brief moment. 2 figures, different worlds. Then the door slid open and she disappeared inside with her entourage. The lobby exhaled. Someone at the far end muttered something under their breath. The receptionist bent her head over a stack of forms as if they had suddenly become fascinating. Evan, half hidden behind a pillar, gave Daniel a look that mixed sympathy and helplessness. Malik rolled his cart out from a side hallway, eyebrows raised. "Bad morning," he said quietly. "Nothing new," Daniel replied. He finished buffing the remaining strip of floor, the machine louder now in his own ears. When the last pass was done, he unplugged it, wrapped the cord with careful precision, and wheeled the cart back toward the service corridor. In the dimmer light of the back hallway, the air felt thicker. He stopped by the locker room door and rested his forehead against the cool metal for a moment. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He took it out, thumb brushing the cracked corner of the screen. A notification from the pediatric clinic reminded him of Mia's appointment time that afternoon. He stared at the words until they stopped blurring. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, straightened, and pushed the cart down the hall to finish his shift. By 2:30, the lobby of Lowell Dynamics had shifted from morning buzz to a slower, steadier hum. Meetings had swallowed the executives. Engineers had disappeared into rooms with whiteboards and screens. The shine on the floor had dulled just enough that he could tell it would need another pass by evening. Daniel stacked the last bag of trash on the cart in the service hallway and checked his watch. He wiped his hands on a clean rag signed out on the clipboard by the door and hung his keys back on their hook. Outside, the day had never quite decided what it wanted to be. The rain had turned to a mist that hung in the air without falling, dampening his hair and collar as he walked. The sky was a flat, uncommitted gray. He caught the bus 2 blocks down, squeezed between a man with paint on his jeans and a woman in a blazer scrolling through emails. The city slid by in soft focus. Tire spray from passing cars streaked the windows. Stoplights glowed against the damp. At the daycare, Mia was on the rug with 3 other kids, carefully placing stickers in a row on a piece of construction paper. Her tongue stuck out a little at the corner of her mouth as she concentrated. The stickers did not line up perfectly, but she did not seem bothered. When she saw him in the doorway, her whole face lit. She stood stickers forgotten and ran full speed into his legs. "You are early," she said, backing up to look at him. Her cheeks were pink from play. "Dr. Day," he said, "we have an appointment with the heart expert, remember." She pressed a hand over her chest. "Dr. Chen," she said, "he has cold hands. I will tell him you requested an upgrade." They signed the sheet, collected her backpack and a folded paper that might have been art, and stepped back out into the chill. He zipped her jacket up to her chin without asking. She made a small sound of protest but did not undo it. The bus to Harborview was more crowded. Nurses in scrubs. A man in a worn suit. A woman with a sleeping infant strapped to her chest. The smell inside the bus was a mix of wet wool coffee and faint baby powder. Mia took the window seat and wiped a small circle in the fogged glass with her sleeve. She drew a heart there with her fingertip, then traced it again until the lines blurred. "Does the doctor listen to my heart in the same place every time?" she asked. "More or less," Daniel said. "You know the routine. Shirt up, deep breath, do not make jokes while he is concentrating." "I never make jokes," she said. "You always make jokes." She grinned and leaned her forehead against the glass. The hospital rose into view as they turned the corner, a cluster of concrete and glass against the damp sky. Lights glowed in a grid on the upper floors. An ambulance sat parked near the emergency entrance, its back doors closed, engine idling with a low rumble. Inside, the air was warmer and smelled like disinfectant cafeteria food and something faintly floral that could not quite cover the rest. Signs in blue pointed in every direction: pediatrics, radiology, cafeteria, blood center. The pediatric cardiology clinic was up 1 level and a turn to the right. The waiting room there was full in that way. Hospitals often were every seat taken, but the talking muted. A television on the wall played a cartoon with the sound turned low. A fish tank burbled in the corner, plastic plants waving in a slow current. Daniel checked Mia in at the desk, spelled her last name twice for the woman at the computer, and took 2 clipboards of forms he had filled out in the same way many times before. They found 2 chairs near the fish tank. Mia slid out of her backpack and set Bear on her lap. She leaned forward to watch a blue fish turn in circles near a rock. "Which one do you think has the strongest heart?" she asked. "The one that keeps going in circles without getting dizzy," he said. "That one then," she said, promptly pointing. He wrote his initials on 3 different lines, checked boxes about family history and previous admissions, and pretended not to notice his own handwriting get tighter when the questions turned to insurance coverage and payment methods. A nurse in light green scrubs opened the inner door and called a name that was not theirs. A boy with a cast on his arm stood, followed by a tired woman holding a toddler who kept dropping a plastic truck. Time stretched and folded. He answered a text from Malik about the broken vending machine and typed back that he would look at it tomorrow. Mia counted the fish out loud, lost count, and started again. When the door opened next, the nurse with a ponytail and a badge that read Sarah RN lifted her clipboard. "Mia Reyes." Mia sprang up. Daniel gathered the forms in the backpack. The hallway behind the door was narrower, lit by the same relentless lights. Yellow ducks marched across a mural on one wall. On the other, a bulletin board held faded flyers about support groups and flu shots. In the exam room, the paper on the bed crackled under Mia as she climbed up. She swung her legs' heels, tapping the metal base. Daniel sat in the single chair by the wall. Dr. Chen arrived with a knock and a tired but genuine smile. His hair was thinner than the first time they had met, but his movements were as precise as ever. He shook Daniel's hand, then wiggled his fingers at Mia. "How is our favorite heart today?" he asked. "Still inside me," Mia said. "Good place for it," he said. "Let us keep it there." He listened with the stethoscope, moved it in small increments along her chest and back, asked her to breathe in and out slower, hold, release. The room filled with the faint sound of her breathing and the steady, quick percussion of her heart through the tiny bell of the instrument. Daniel watched his face for any change. A crease that had not been there, a shadow at the mouth. He did not see one. "So far, everything sounds stable," Dr. Chen said as he finally draped the stethoscope around his neck. "No new murmurs. Same pattern as last time." "Stable," Mia repeated. "That is a good word, right?" "It is a very good word," he said. He went over numbers on a chart, suggested another follow-up. In a few months, reminded Daniel which symptoms to watch for and which could wait until morning. Daniel nodded, asked 2 questions about activity levels and another about a school field trip that would involve walking up a hill. They left the room with a sticker on Mia's shirt, a cartoon heart with a smiley face. "It did not even hurt," she said as they stepped back into the hallway. "That is because you are brave," Daniel said. "I think it is because he is good at the cold hands thing now," she said. They walked back toward the main corridor. As they passed the intersection that led to the emergency department, a burst of motion broke into their path. A gurney shot through the double doors, pushed by 2 paramedics in bright jackets. A small form lay on it, half wrapped in a blanket. The child's face was pale against the white pillow. An oxygen mask covered her mouth and nose, fogging with each shallow breath. Monitor leads snaked across her chest. The beeping from the portable monitor was fast and uneven. One paramedic called out numbers as they moved. Blood pressure dropping, pulse thready, 7-year-old female abdominal pain onset this morning, worsening en route. Possible internal bleeding, labs pending. A nurse jogged beside them, holding a clipboard and trying to keep up. Daniel instinctively stepped back, pulling Mia with him, until his shoulders met the wall. The gurney passed so close he could see the child's lashes resting on her cheeks, every small freckle across her nose. In the space behind the gurney, a woman trailed one hand pressed to her mouth. Her hair hung loose from a bun, damp with sweat or rain, eyes wild. Someone in scrubs gently steered her toward a chair, saying something that sounded soothing and not at all effective. Mia looked up at him. "That girl," she whispered. "She is really sick." "The doctors will help her," he said. "That is what they are here for." He believed it and did not both at once. They watched the gurney disappear around a curve in the hall. A few seconds later, the double doors at the end flapped shut behind it. The sounds of the emergency department swallowed the moment. "Come on," he said softly. "We have a bus to catch." They reached the elevator. It took them down to the main floor with a slow shudder. The doors opened onto the central lobby, where families sat in clusters of chairs and volunteers pushed carts of books and magazines. They made their way toward the exit. Daniel could see the line of people at the front desk. the sliding glass doors, the faint wash of cold air from outside whenever they opened. He was 3 steps from the turn that would take them down a side hall when a sound cracked across the corridor behind them. A scream. Not long, not drawn out, just one sharp broken note. Metal clattered against tile. Someone shouted for help. Daniel spun around. Down the hall that led toward imaging and a side bank of elevators, a wheelchair lay on its side. A portable IV pole rocked beside it, the bag still hanging, but the line pulled taut and trailing. On the floor, a small body convulsed, limbs jerking in tight, uncontrolled arcs. It was the same girl from the gurney. He recognized the hospital gown, the freckles, the pale hair fanned on the tile. The oxygen mask was gone. Her eyes were rolled back, only thin slivers of white showing. Foam gathered at the corner of her mouth. A nurse stumbled toward her, breathless. She unbuckled herself, the nurse gasped. I turned my back to sign a form and she bolted. I could not catch her. The girl's arm flung out, knocked over a metal tray. Instruments scattered, clinking across the floor. Mia froze at his side. "Daddy," she said. Her voice was very small. He looked down at her, at the way her hand had clamped around his fingers, knuckles white. "Against the wall," he said, keeping his voice as steady as he could. "Back to it. Eyes on me." She nodded and moved, pressing herself flat against the painted cinder block Bear clutched tight. He was already moving before the thought finished forming. Knees hit the floor harder than he meant, pain shooting up his legs. He knelt at the girl's side, careful to stay clear of her kicking feet. The training he had taken in a different life, in a different building, rose through the fog of adrenaline. He turned her gently onto her side, sliding his folded jacket under her head so she would not slam it against the tile. Her body fought the position, tense and jerking, but he held steady. "Call a code," he said to the nurse without looking up. "Now." The nurse fumbled for the intercom at the wall. Her hand shook. "Code blue, pediatric corridor 3, she said into the box. "Code blue." Spit and foam bubbled at the girl's lips. He used one corner of his sleeve to wipe it away, cleared her mouth as best he could without forcing anything. Her breaths came in ragged bursts between the spasms. "You are okay?" He said the words more rhythm than meaning. "You are safe. We have got you." Her fingers closed around his wrist in a grip that surprised him with its strength. For less than a heartbeat, her eyes focused, blue and full of terror. "My mom," she whispered. The sound was wet and thin. "She is not here, please." "I am here," he said. "Stay with me." The seizure rolled through her like a storm. He counted in his head to keep his own panic from taking over. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Her muscles screamed under his hands. He kept her turned, kept her airway clear, kept his voice in her ear. The overhead speakers crackled and called the code again. Footsteps pounded toward them. A crash cart rattled. Voices layered. Orders snapped into the air. At 40 seconds, the girl's body began to slacken. The jerk softened, then stopped. Her hand went limp around his wrist. For a split second, he felt the old cold fear rise, the one that smelled like hospital sheets and loss. Then her chest hitched. A breath staggered in. Her eyes opened unfocused, then slowly centered on his face. He let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "There you are," he said. She swallowed, throat working. "Do not let me die," she whispered the words barely louder than the beep of the nearby monitor. "Please." His own heart thudded hard enough that he could feel it in his jaw. "I will not," he said. "I am right here." The crash team reached them, knees hitting the floor around the girl. Gloves snapped. A mask was pressed over her face. Someone attached a portable monitor and called out numbers. Daniel eased back, jacket still under her head, his legs numb from kneeling. The muscles in his hands trembled now that they were not needed. From the wall, Mia broke free and ran to him, slamming into his side with more force than her size should have allowed. "You helped her," she said, breathless. "You helped her." He put an arm around her shoulders and drew her close, eyes still on the girl as they lifted her back to the gurney. Somewhere in the blur of bodies and lights and noise, he heard another voice, high and broken in the distance, calling a name. He could not see the woman it belonged to. He only knew there was a mother nearby who was not at her child's side, and a child who had asked a stranger not to let her die. The crash team flowed around him until he was no longer needed. Someone slid his jacket out from under the girl's head with a quick apology so they could adjust the cervical collar. The cart jolted as they lifted it, then rolled away, its speed monitors chiming like frantic birds. For a few seconds, Daniel stayed on his knees on the tile. His muscles had not caught up to the idea that they could move again. The floor felt cold even through the fabric of his pants. A faint smear of saliva and foam darkened his sleeve where he had wiped the girl's mouth. Mia pressed herself into his side, small fingers digging into his arm. "Is she going to be okay?" she asked. He stood slowly, joints stiff. His heart thumped hard in his chest. Not from exertion, but from the echo of a memory it would not loosen. "She is in the right place," he said. "They got to her fast." It was the safest sentence he could find between truth and comfort. A nurse crouched to retrieve scattered instruments from the floor, metal clinking as she dropped them into a bin. Her hands were still shaking. When she looked up at him, there was gratitude in her eyes and something like shock. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do," she said. "Most people freeze." He did not know what to do with the compliment. He nodded once. "I had training," he said. She glanced at his shirt, at the Lowell Dynamics logo stitched above his pocket. It did not match the training she had in mind. She opened her mouth to ask something, then closed it again as another call came down the hall. "Thank you," she said instead. He took Mia's hand. "Come on, kiddo," he murmured. "Let us get out of the way." They walked back toward the main lobby more slowly this time. Mia stayed closer than usual, her arm pressed against his. Bear was clamped between her and his side, the toy's stitched smile smushed into his jacket. "She looked scared," Mia said, "like really scared." "I know," he said. Was she going to die? The words landed between them with the same weight he had felt when they left his own mouth, years ago beside another bed. "She had a seizure," he said. "Her body was doing something it could not control. The doctors know how to help with that." Mia seemed to test the words against what she had seen. Her nose wrinkled. "When I cannot control my legs, you say I am just being silly," she said. "That is because when you stomp around the apartment, I can still see your eyes," he said. "You are there." She was not all the way there for a minute. Mia glanced up at him, then at the hallway they had left behind. "She said her mom was not there," Mia said. "Maybe her mom got lost." "Sometimes the hospital is very big," he said. "Sometimes they keep parents in a different room for a while." He did not say what else it could mean. He remembered signing papers in a family conference room, while Elena slept 3 floors away, tubes in her arms, machine lights blinking. He remembered the feeling of being in 2 places at once, and nowhere at all. They reached the elevator and rode it down in silence. The doors opened to the softer chaos of the main floor. Volunteers pushed carts of picture books. A toddler cried in the registration line. A janitor in green scrubs mopped up a spill near the vending machines, his mop leaving sharp, wet lines on the tile. Mia tugged his hand. "I am hungry," she said. "Not a lot, just a bit." He checked the time. Past 4. Too early for dinner, too late to pretend a snack would not happen. "We can grab something small before the bus," he said. "Fruit, maybe." She wrinkled her nose. "Fruit is not small," she said. "Fruit is responsible." He almost laughed. "We will negotiate," he said. They were threading through the cluster of chairs toward the cafeteria when the hospital intercom clicked on. The sound was familiar, but the quality of the silence that followed it was not. "Code red," the voice said. Calm, firm. "Code red. O negative blood needed immediately. Pediatric emergency. All available donors and compatible staff, please report to the blood center on level 2. The second she heard the words, Mia stopped. Her head tilted as if the sound had come from somewhere inside her rather than above. The lobby changed. Not dramatically, not like the panic of a fire alarm, but in smaller ways. 2 nurses at the coffee cart turned to look at each other. A man in a white coat reached for his pager before the announcement even finished. The janitor in green paused his mop mid-swipe. O negative. The syllables lodged under Daniel's ribs again the way they had before. It was a plain fact on his medical forms. Universal donor. Rare but not unique. Useful in an abstract way. The voice repeated the call. Level 2. Pediatric emergency. Beside him, Mia looked up slowly. "That is your kind," she said. "The rare kind." He could not tell her she was wrong. He also could not yet make his throat shape an answer, so he nodded once. "It is," he said. "Then they need you," she said. No drama, no pleading, just the straight line from one point to another. She had always been good at patterns. His first instinct was to deflect. "They have staff," he started. "A lot of people here have that type. They make announcements like this all the time." He heard the thinness of the lie as he said it. He had been in enough hospitals to know that was not true. Code Red did not sound like a script. It sounded like pressure. Mia was watching his face carefully, the change in him making something in hers tighten. "If that was me," she said, "and they needed that kind, you would go." It was not a question. He saw the picture she had made in her head herself, on a bed like that girl, wires and tubes, and a room full of strangers. The idea made his stomach turn. "In a heartbeat," he said. She nodded, as if that matched what she knew of him. Her hand found the hem of his jacket and held on. "Then somebody's dad has to do that for her," she said. The simplicity of it pressed against the part of his brain that counted and calculated. He could hear the other arguments assembling, the look at the envelopes on the table, the way the room spun a little when he stood up too fast some mornings. The job he had to show up for tomorrow with a body that worked. On a small metal panel to his left, the sign for the blood center pointed down a side corridor. White letters on blue plastic. It could have been any other sign in any other building, if not for the way it suddenly seemed heavier. He swallowed. "Sit here for a second," he said. He guided Mia to a row of molded chairs bolted to the floor. She climbed up without arguing, which told him everything about how serious this felt to her. She hugged Bear against her chest, his button eye pressed under her chin. "Do not move," he said. "I am going to ask a question." "Are you coming back?" she asked. He met her gaze. "You know I am," he said. Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. She nodded and settled back, small feet dangling above the floor. The corridor to level 2 was quieter. The overhead lights still hummed, but the noise of the main lobby thinned. Posters on the wall urged people to be heroes, to donate to save a life. The smiling faces on the posters looked impossibly rested. He followed the arrows until he reached a set of double doors with Blood Center printed in discreet lettering. Inside, the air was cooler. Chairs lined the walls, some empty, some holding people with colored bandages on their arms. A soda machine buzzed in the corner, full of bright cans. At the check-in desk, a woman in her 50s with glasses hanging on a chain around her neck looked up as he approached. Her badge read Angela in black print. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I heard the announcement," he said. "I am O-negative." Her back straightened the smallest bit. "Do you know that from previous donations?" she asked. "Yes, I used to give a few times a year." "When was your last donation?" He did the math in his head. "About a year ago," he said. "Maybe a little more." She reached for a clipboard and a laminated sheet. "We are in critical need right now," she said. "We will need to do a quick screening to make sure you are eligible. It will take a few minutes." "Do what you have to do," he said. She handed him forms, questionings, in tight columns. "Have you traveled outside the country? Have you felt ill in the last week? Have you taken certain medications, had certain procedures, lived in certain years in certain places?" He filled them in as quickly and honestly as he could, awareness of the clock running under his skin. Angela took the clipboard, scanned it, then called a nurse to do the finger prick and blood pressure. The small room where they did the testing had no windows. The chair was vinyl and slightly sticky against his forearm. The nurse pricked his finger, squeezed a drop of blood onto a strip, fed it into a small machine. "You are not nervous, are you?" she asked, wrapping the cuff around his arm. "I have been poked worse," he said. Her smile was brief but real. The machine beeped. She read the tiny display, then looked up at him. "Your iron levels look good," she said. "Blood pressure is in range. We will confirm your type, but if it is what you say it is, they are going to love you down here today." He felt something in his chest ease and tighten at the same time. They moved him to another room, larger, with 3 reclined chairs lined up along one wall. 2 were empty. One held a man reading a magazine, his arm outstretched with a needle taped in place. A soft pump wheezed quietly, drawing blood into a slowly filling bag. Angela joined them with a folder in her hand. She had taken her glasses off and held them by one arm. "Mr. Reyes," she said, "we rushed your typing." She glanced at the page in the folder. "You are O-negative with a very rare antigen profile. That means your blood is not just compatible, it is exceptionally so. For this patient, it is about as ideal as it gets." He absorbed the information in pieces. O-negative, rare, ideal. "How much do you need?" he asked. "The child has lost a lot of blood," Angela said. "The surgeons have done what they can to control the bleeding, but she is not stabilizing. We would need you to donate a double unit. It is more than a standard donation." "Is that safe?" he asked. "There are risks," she said. "You will likely feel weak and lightheaded. You may have nausea. You should not be alone for several hours afterward. We will monitor you closely, but we have to be honest about the toll it can take." He pictured the bus ride home, the narrow apartment, the climb up the stairs with Mia's weight half on him when she got tired. He pictured her in the lobby chair downstairs right now, swinging her feet and staring at the door he had come through. "How long does she have without it?" he asked. Angela held his gaze. "Not long," she said. The room seemed to narrow around that sentence. The other donor turned a page in his magazine, oblivious. The pump wheezed again. Daniel looked at his own arm. The veins stood out faintly under his skin from the earlier pressure cuff. Strong enough, reliable enough. It was just fluid, he told himself, just a part of him that he could spare. "Okay," he said, "let us do it." Angela let out a breath she might not have realized she had been holding. "Thank you," she said. "Lie back for me. We will get you set up." The nurse found a vein in the crook of his elbow with quick, efficient fingers. The antiseptic swab was cold. The needle slid in with a pinch that made his jaw clench for a second, then settled. Tubing snaked from his arm to the empty bag waiting on a small electronic scale. He watched the first dark ribbon of red move through the clear plastic, hesitant at first, then more steady. The pump ticked softly, counting drops he could not see. The chair reclined under him with a small mechanical whir. He let his head rest against the padded back and shifted his shoulders to get comfortable. "Try to relax," the nurse said. "Squeeze the ball every few seconds." She placed a foam ball in his hand. He closed his fingers around it and released, squeezed and released, giving the machine what it asked for. "Is there someone with you today?" Angela asked. "You mentioned a daughter." "She is upstairs in the main lobby," he said. "I left her in a chair while I came to check. I did not tell her how long this might take." "We can have someone bring her down when we are a little further along," Angela said. "She should be with you when you are done." He nodded. The room felt both huge and too small, as if the walls were far away but the ceiling had lowered. Warmth spread from his elbow outward in waves. He fixed his eyes on the slow filling of the bag. Drop by drop, his blood pooled there, a deep red that looked almost black. Somewhere else in the building, in another bright room, under the same humming lights, a little girl lay waiting for something that could not come from a machine or a shelf. It had to come from a body that had already carried its own share of weight. He closed his eyes for a moment and pictured Mia safe in her chair with Bear and the way she had looked up at him when she said, "Then they need you." When he opened them again, the bag was a third full. Time thinned in the blood center. The pump clicked and hummed beside Daniel's chair. The sound was soft, almost polite, but it kept finding its way through every other noise. Each time it cycled, the bag on the little scale swayed in the level of red rose another fraction of an inch. Warmth crawled up his arm across his chest and settled in his face. His fingers tingled. He flexed them around the foam ball, squeezed, relaxed, squeezed again, letting the rhythm distract him. "How are you feeling?" the nurse asked. "Like I forgot to eat lunch," he said. "I will live." "That is the idea," she said, checking the line for kinks. She adjusted the angle of the chair a little higher, then moved away to check on the other donor. The man with the magazine had switched to scrolling through his phone, his bag almost full and ready to be capped. Daniel let his head roll to the side. The ceiling tiles above him were like the ones in every other hospital he had ever been, in a field of cheap white squares. A faint water stain bloomed in one corner. In the edge of his vision, he could see the doorway and the hall beyond it, people passing in both directions, some brisk, some slow. He thought of Mia upstairs in the lobby. He pictured her swinging her feet, counting tiles, making up stories in her head about people walking by. She could stretch 10 minutes into an hour that way. He hoped this would only be an hour. The pump clicked again. The bag was nearly halfway full now. Outside the blood center, the hospital corridors pulsed with their own urgency. On the pediatric floor, alarms had quieted to a more controlled chaos. In the operating room, where Sophie lay, the surgeons had their hands deep in work, voices low and precise, as they spoke over the steady beep of the monitor. Her blood pressure kept dipping, edging into numbers the anesthesiologist did not like. "She is dry," someone said. "We need volume." "We are hanging the last unit now," another voice answered. "After this, we are out." In the small family consultation room, off the pediatric ICU, a doctor with gray at his temples sat across from a woman in a navy coat. She had not taken it off. Her back was straight, fingers locked around a paper cup she had not yet raised to her lips. "Catherine," the doctor said, "we are doing everything we can." Her eyes were two wide whites showing. She looked at his mouth and nodded his words. "You said that 20 minutes ago," she said. "Her pressure keeps dropping. If we can get her blood volume back up, she has a very good chance," he said patiently. "We are working with the blood bank now." "Who do I talk to?" she said. "Who is in charge down there? Tell me their name. I will make them find more." He hesitated. It was a look she recognized from boardrooms when someone knew they had nothing new to offer. "We have called every hospital in the county," he said. "We have asked the regional center for an emergency shipment. It will not arrive in time." For a heartbeat, she did not understand the last sentence. It hung in the air, words without meaning. Then the shape of it settled into place. "In time," she repeated. The paper cup crumpled slightly in her grip. "What does that mean in minutes?" "Without more blood, she may not tolerate much more of the surgery. Her heart is already working very hard." Her heart. that small, fierce thing that had thudded against her chest the first time she held Sophie skin to skin, that she had watched on a screen at 12 weeks, a flicker of light in a grainy image. Now, an abstract organ on a chart in front of a man who would tuck that same chart in a folder at the end of the day. Catherine stood so quickly the chair scraped. "I am going downstairs," she said. "If there is anything left to find, I will find it myself." The doctor began to say something about protocols, then stopped. There was nothing to stop her from walking to the elevator. No rule that would close the doors on her badge. The corridor outside the consultation room was too bright. Her eyes stung. She blinked the moisture back and moved heels, striking the floor in a faster rhythm than usual. Nurses and residents stepped aside when they saw her face. She bypassed the main elevators and cut through a side hall she did not know well. Signs blurred at the edges of her vision: respiratory therapy, storage. She followed the arrows that pointed to laboratory services and then blood center in smaller print beneath. Her hand hit the elevator call button harder than necessary. The door slid open. Inside, a man in scrubs pressed himself against the panel to give her space. The ride down felt slower than any trip she had taken from the top floor of Lowell Dynamics to the lobby. The elevator doors opened onto a narrower hallway with different sounds. Less chatter, more concentrated footstep noise, and the occasional rattle of a metal cart. The air was cooler here, with a faint scent of rubber and preservative. The sign for the blood center hung above a pair of double doors. She pushed through them without pause. Inside the room was busier than the last time she had been in a similar place years ago, to donate for a corporate drive back when giving blood had been a photo opportunity. Techs moved between stations. Phones rang. A fax machine impossibly spat out a page in the corner. She strode to the front desk. "I am looking for whoever is in charge," she said to the woman with the glasses. Angela looked up and recognized the expression. It did not matter that she did not know the face. Grief, fear, anger, and a kind of helpless fury at the limits of medicine all wore similar masks. "I am coordinating today," Angela said. "Are you a potential donor, Ms. Lowell?" Catherine said. "My daughter is upstairs, 7 years old. Abigail Sophie Lowell. She is in surgery. They said she needs O negative. They said you are out." Angela's eyes softened and sharpened at once. "We were out," she said. "We may have a donor." "May," Catherine repeated. The word tasted like sand. "You either do or you do not." Angela nodded, patient. "We have a donor on the chair right now," she said. "We already confirmed his type. He is a very good match. We are collecting a double unit from him. When it is processed, it will go straight to your daughter." The floor seemed to shift under Catherine's feet, as if she had stepped onto one of the moving platforms in the robotics lab. She grabbed the edge of the desk for balance. "Where is he?" she asked. Angela gestured toward the inner room with the recliners. "In there," she said. "You can see him from the hall window. We try not to crowd the donors." Catherine started walking before Angela had finished the sentence. The hallway outside the donation room had a large observation window. It was meant for classes, for groups on tours, for the occasional nervous friend who stayed just outside the line of needles. The glass was flawless, reflecting the fluorescent lights in a pale sheet. Catherine stepped up to it and looked in. 3 chairs, 2 occupied. One by the man with the magazine, now finished, his bag sealed, and labeled a bandage on his arm as he prepared to stand. In the middle chair, slightly reclined, sat the other donor. His left arm was extended on the armrest, elbow exposed. Tape held the needle in place. Tubing ran from his skin to the half-filled bag beside him, which swung slightly if he shifted his weight. His head was turned, eyes half closed. The uniform shirt he wore was familiar, the particular shade of blue she had walked past 100 times. The name patch over his chest was white with blue stitching. Reyes. For a second, the name did not connect with anything. Her brain had been moving in other circles. Numbers, vital signs, surgical risks. The company's stock price bizarrely flickering at the edge of it all, like a ticker she could not switch off. Then the image of the lobby that morning rose unbidden. The cleaning cart near the elevator. The man standing beside it, hand on the handle, apologizing that it was just for a minute. She saw again the way he had pulled the cart back, the way his shoulders had squared, the look in his eyes that she had not wanted to read. The different parts of the day clicked together, a cruel, neat puzzle. It was the same man. The janitor whose presence had irritated her in front of the investors in her head. The man whose name she had not bothered to learn, although it was stitched right there on his chest. He was watching the bag as his blood filled it. His jaw moved slightly, as if he were chewing over something unsaid. The room swayed. For a moment she thought it was her that she was about to faint, that someone would have to take her blood pressure. Then she realized it was the reflection in the glass. Her own face had gone pale, mouth, parted eyes wide in a way she would never allow in a conference room. Angela had come to stand near her, arms folded loosely, giving her space but staying close enough in case she needed a chair. He answered the call almost as soon as it went out, Angela said quietly. Said he was O negative, asked to be tested. His profile came back as one of the rare ones. It is a real gift. Catherine did not take her eyes off Daniel. Is he staff? She asked. The question sounded thin, but she needed the answer spoken aloud. Yes, Angela said. He mentioned he works for Lowell Dynamics. Facilities, I think. He said he had to get back for his daughter later, but he agreed to the extended donation anyway. Facilities. The word was a polite label for the invisible people who kept buildings running. The ones who made sure windows stayed clean, floors stayed polished, trash disappeared. The ones who were not invited to investor meetings. The ones whose carts she should not have to walk around first thing in the morning. Daniel shifted in the chair. His eyes opened a little wider, then drifted toward the doorway as if he had heard something. Catherine stepped back from the glass, on instinct pressing herself against the opposite wall, her heart pounding in her throat. She did not want him to look up and see her there. She did not know what she would say if he did. From his angle, Daniel could see only shapes in the glass. The reflection of lights, the outline of the nurse moving past the faint suggestion of someone outside. His attention slid away. The bag at his elbow was heavier now, sagging on the hook. The nurse checked the scale, tapped a button, then glanced at his face. How is the head? She asked. A little floaty, he said. We are more than halfway, she said. You are doing very well. Tell that to my arm, he said. She smiled and adjusted the rate slightly. In the observation hallway, Catherine pressed the heel of her hand to her sternum, as if she could push down the panic that had lodged there. This man who cleaned her lobby and quietly got out of her way was letting them take more blood than a regular donation allowed, letting his pressure dip, his head spin, his muscles weaken, so that her daughter had more than a graph line of a chance. He did not know her well enough to like her. The last direct word she had spoken to him had been a rebuke. He had stood there in front of people who took their cues from her and apologized for his existence in the wrong place. Her mind reeled back through meetings, flights, hours spent rehearsing pitches. All the time she had measured people by their usefulness in slides and spreadsheets. Here was usefulness in a different form entirely. A man whose worth could not be quantified in key performance indicators, currently pouring part of himself into a bag so her child could live. Through the glass she watched his hand continue to squeeze the foam ball. Steady, relentless. Angela touched her elbow lightly. If you would like, Angela said, I can have someone call upstairs and let the surgical team know we have product on the way. It might help them make decisions. Do it, Catherine said. Her voice came out hoarse. She cleared her throat. Please. Angela nodded and stepped away. Catherine stayed where she was, back against the cool wall, watching the man in the chair give away something vital, without making any demands at all. Her heels, which had always sounded like authority on polished stone, felt suddenly out of place on this floor. The room tilted a little when Daniel turned his head. Not enough to make him sick, just enough to remind him that there was less of him in the chair than when he had sat down. The bag at his elbow was close to full now. The blood inside it was thick and dark, swaying slightly on the hook with each small movement. The scale under it blinked green. Almost there, the nurse said. Last stretch. He let his eyes close for a count of 5, then opened them again. The trick kept the dizziness from growing teeth. His fingers tightened and loosened around the foam ball, the motion slower than before. Through the doorway, footsteps approached. He heard Angela's voice, then another higher and lighter. Daddy. He shifted, careful not to tug the needle. Mia stood just inside the room, flanked by a volunteer in a red vest. Her backpack hung crooked off one shoulder. Bear dangled by one arm from her hand. There she is, he said. His voice sounded different to his own ears, scraped thin. Mia hurried to his side. The volunteer hovered in the doorway until the nurse gave a small nod. Your dad is doing something very important, the volunteer said to Mia. We thought he might want some company. Thank you, Daniel said. Mia climbed onto the small padded stool next to the chair. Her eyes darted to the tubing in his arm, then to the bag. She frowned. That is a lot, she said. Apparently I have been hoarding, he said. It looks like juice, she said. Remind me never to serve you that at snack time. She set Bear on her lap and wrapped her hands around the stuffed body. For a moment, she just watched the slow drip, her mouth pressed into a line. Does it hurt? She asked. Vorsicht. Not really, he said. Feels like when your arm falls asleep, only on purpose. Why are you pale? She asked. His lips curved. Because someone forgot to bring me a sandwich, he said. Her brows knit. I did not know I needed to, she said. I am kidding, he said. Kind of. The nurse checked the scale again and adjusted a clamp. We are at target, she said. We are going to slow it down and then stop. He felt the change in the pull on his arm the way the flow eased. The bag swung more gently. The pump gave a different tone, a confirmation beep. Okay, Mr. Reyes, the nurse said. I am going to take the needle out now. Keep your arm still for me. He watched her hands more out of habit than nerves. She peeled the tape, withdrew the needle in a smooth motion, and pressed a wad of gauze to the puncture. Hold this tight, she said. Straight arm, no bending yet. He did as instructed. His fingers were clumsy. Mia reached up with one small hand and helped him press the gauze in place. Good assistant, the nurse said. Maybe we should hire you. Do you pay in stickers? Mia asked. We can negotiate, the nurse said. She wrapped a length of stretchy bandage around his elbow, snug but not painful. The chair whirred as she raised the back to a more upright position. Take your time, she said. Do not rush standing up. We want your brain to catch up with the rest of you. Angela came back in with a clear plastic container, the lid fogged from the warmth inside. We keep the good snacks for the heroes, she said. Crackers juice may be something with more sugar than sense. Mia perked up. He likes orange, she said. Angela handed Daniel a cup of orange juice and a small pack of crackers. His hand shook a little as he took the cup, so Mia steadied it from underneath. As he ate, color crept back into his face. The room settled into a more stable position. The thudding in his ears eased to something like normal. How long until they can use it? He asked, nodding at the bag now lying on a tray labeled and sealed. We will run it through the rapid processing, Angela said. The lab will clear it as soon as possible. It will be in the operating room within the hour. He let out a breath. Good, he said. Used to be that he never thought about where blood went. It was something you gave, then you went back to your day. Today, every minute between his arm and that girl's veins felt personal. In the operating room, a nurse received a call from the blood bank. Her eyes lit in a way that had nothing to do with the surgical lights. Compatible unit ready, she told the anesthesiologist. On its way up now? About time, the anesthesiologist said, relief tucked inside the words. When the bag arrived, clear tubing snaked from its port to the line already in Sophie's arm. The red inside was the same shade as the one that had hung beside Daniel's chair. Gravity did the rest, guided by careful hands. As the transfusion flowed, the monitors began to change. Numbers steadied that had been sliding. Beeps evened out. The jagged line of her heart rhythm smoothed. Pressure is coming up, someone said. Hold it there, kid, the surgeon murmured, eyes on the field. On the pediatric floor in a small staff lounge that smelled of coffee and microwave popcorn, a nurse glanced at the board that tracked patient status. The note by Sophie Lowell's name shifted from critical to guarded. It was a small change in ink, a large one in meaning. In the blood center, Daniel finished his juice and leaned his head back. Mia watched his chest rise and fall with an attention that was too old for 6. You gave her a lot, she said. Do you have enough left for you? He looked down at her. I have enough, he said. My body will make more. That is what it does. Like when I scrape my knee, she said, and it makes a scab. Just like that, he said, inside. She seemed to consider that, then nodded. Can I tell Dr. Chen that my dad's heart helped someone else's heart? She asked. You can tell him whatever you want, he said, as long as you do not tell him about the time I almost fainted at your vaccines. You almost fainted, she said, eyes wide. I said almost, he answered. Angela returned with discharge papers and a form for him to sign. We would like you to sit here another 15 minutes, she said. If you feel steady after that, we can let you go. No running marathons tonight, no lifting anything heavier than your daughter. She is heavier than she looks, he said. I know, Mia said. My brain is huge. Angela smiled. If you feel dizzy at home, sit down, she said. If you feel worse than that, call. Your body just did a big thing. Daniel signed where she indicated. The pen felt heavy in his hand. Thank you again, she said. The words were simple, but her voice held a weight that matched their size. You made a real difference today. He nodded because he did not know how to receive that without deflecting it into a joke. When they finally stepped back into the main corridor, the shift from the cool of the blood center to the warmer air of the hospital was noticeable. The sounds were louder here. Life had gone on outside the small room where his blood had pooled in plastic. Mia held his hand tightly as they walked. He let her set the pace. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else for the first dozen steps, then settled. On the pediatric floor, a nurse stuck her head into the family consultation room, where Catherine sat staring at a spot on the opposite wall. "Mrs. Lowell," the nurse said, "we just received word from the surgical team. Your daughter is stabilizing. The transfusion is working." For a second, Catherine did not react. The words floated in front of her, then they sank in. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. The air she let out sounded almost like a sob. "Stabilizing," she repeated. "Her pressure is coming up," the nurse said. "They are closing now. Dr. Henley will speak with you when he comes out, but they wanted you to know she is responding." Catherine closed her eyes. The paper cup in her hand had gone cold. The coffee inside was untouched. "Can I see her when they are done?" she asked. "Yes," the nurse said. "She will be in recovery for a bit, then back to the ICU. We will bring you when it is time." Catherine nodded. The nurse stepped out quietly. Alone again, Catherine pressed her palms together and brought her folded hands to her mouth. It was not a gesture she usually made, not praying exactly, more like holding herself in place until her legs trusted the floor. She thought of the man in the chair downstairs, of the way the bag had filled, of the bandage that would now sit in the crook of his arm, a small square over a small wound. He had done that for a child he did not know, for a mother who had ignored him. The discrepancy sat in her chest like a stone. Evening fell outside while the hospital continued its own schedule. Nurses changed shift, staff rotated out. The sky beyond the windows went from gray to dark blue, and then to black, the city lights brightening to fill the void. In the ICU, Sophie lay under warm blankets, her hair damp at the temples, a line of fresh stitches hidden beneath the bandage on her abdomen. The monitor by her bed beeped in a steady, acceptable rhythm. Her face had lost the gray cast it had worn in the operating room. A faint blush of color had returned to her cheeks. Catherine sat in the chair at her bedside, hand around her daughter's thumb, stroking absent circles on the back. "You scared everyone," she whispered. "Overachiever." Sophie did not wake, but her fingers twitched once in her mother's grasp. Hours later, when a nurse suggested she go home and rest, Catherine shook her head. "I am not leaving," she said. "At least get something to eat," the nurse said. "You will do her more good if you do not pass out." Catherine relented enough to stand. Her knees cracked in protest. The hospital corridor outside the room seemed longer than she remembered. Near the nurse's station, the same nurse from earlier approached her, a bit of paper in hand. "Ms. Lowell," she said, "there is something you should know." Catherine braced herself. For a moment, she thought the new information would be medical. "The donor," the nurse said, "Mr. Reyes." One of the other nurses recognized him from our volunteer clinic nights. He used to come in for free screenings when his wife was sick. Catherine focused on the nurse's face. "Wife," she repeated. "She had cancer," the nurse said. "They came here sometimes when insurance would not cover a test, or he could not get in anywhere else. After she passed, he started coming in alone. He always brings his daughter for her heart appointments. He works 2 jobs, no full coverage, but he never misses one of her visits." The picture sharpened, not just a uniform, a history. "What did he do before facilities work?" Catherine asked. "He was an engineer," the nurse said. "Robotics, I think. One of our techs used to work with him before his wife got sick. Said he was good. He gave it up when she needed round-the-clock care." The hall seemed smaller all at once. Air pressed lightly against Catherine's chest. "Thank you," she said. The words felt inadequate. The nurse gave her a sympathetic nod. "Last I heard, he was being discharged," she said. "Front lobby. He looked a little wiped out. His little girl was with him. Tough kid." Catherine stood very still for a count of 3, then turned toward the elevator. The ride down felt different this time. She watched the numbers light one by one. Her reflection in the metal doors looked more like the woman she saw late at night than the one in company videos. There were lines at the corners of her mouth she did not usually notice. Her eyes looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with ours. The main lobby on the ground floor was quieter than it had been that afternoon. The volunteer carts were put away. The chairs were half empty. The overhead announcement spoke of visiting hours and hand hygiene. Near the automatic doors, under a large abstract painting, Daniel sat on a plastic bench. Mia was curled against his side, head on his shoulder, eyes closed. His arm was around her hand, resting on her upper arm. The white bandage at his elbow showed under his rolled sleeve. He looked smaller, without the movement that usually filled the space around him. The energy he carried when pushing a cart or buffing a floor had settled into stillness. His face was pale, a little drawn around the mouth. He watched the revolving door with a kind of patient detachment, as if waiting for something delayed on a track. Catherine's heels made a soft sound on the tile as she approached, quieter now that there were fewer other feet to cover them. She stopped a few steps away. "Mr. Reyes," she said. He turned his head. His eyes clicked into focus. It took him a fraction of a second to place her. This was not the building where she usually addressed him, not the suit she wore there, not the context. "Ms. Lowell," he said. The words were neutral. He did not move his arm from around his daughter. "I wanted to," she began, then stopped. The sentence she had rehearsed in the elevator, the one about gratitude and responsibility, scattered. Mia stirred at his side, blinked up at Catherine, then tucked herself closer to Daniel like a small animal testing the air. "I heard about your daughter," he said. "They said she is stabilizing." Relief flickered through Catherine that he knew that much. It spared her from having to voice it and watch it land. "She is," Catherine said. Her throat tightened around the second part. "Because of you." He looked down at the bandage on his arm, then back up. "I was a match," he said. "It is just blood." "Not just anything," she said. The words came out sharper than she intended. She softened her tone. "I treated you poorly this morning. That is an accurate way to put it. I did not see you, not really. Then when my daughter needed help, you did not hesitate." He let the silence sit between them for a moment. The hospital sounds filled it. A phone rang at the front desk. The automatic doors sighed open and shut. "I did not do it for you," he said. She nodded once. "I know," she said. "That is part of why it matters." Mia looked between them, eyes wide. Her gaze lingered on Catherine's face as if trying to reconcile this woman with some version she had heard about from her father or seen in a lobby doorway. "I am sorry," Catherine said. The words were plain. "For this morning, for before this morning, for every time you were in a room I walked through and I did not bother to see a person standing there." Daniel studied her. His expression was not easy to read. There was tiredness there and something like watchfulness. Not hostile, but cautious. "You do not owe me an apology," he said. She shook her head. "I do," she said, "whether you need it or not." They stayed like that for a breath, then two. From outside, a taxi pulled up to the front entrance and idled, its roof light glowing. "Are you heading home soon?" she asked. "You look like you should not be navigating buses tonight." "I called a cab," he said. "It will be fine." "Mia does not have a proper car seat in a cab," Catherine said. The practical detail arrived before she could stop it. "There are company cars with restraints. Let me arrange one. It is a small thing compared to what you have done." He glanced down at his daughter, at the way she was fighting sleep, even as her eyelids drooped. The thought of jostling her through bus transfers with his legs still unsteady flashed through his mind. "A ride would be appreciated," he said. "Thank you." Something in her shoulders loosened. "I will make a call," she said. She stepped aside to phone her assistant voice, turning brisk as she requested a car be sent to the hospital, with a child seat and given priority. Then she returned to stand a respectful distance away, hands folded in front of her. They waited like that in an uneasy but not entirely uncomfortable quiet until a dark sedan pulled up outside. The driver came in, confirmed Daniel's name and address, and led them to the entrance. Catherine walked with them to the curb. The night air was cooler here. The city sounds were closer. She watched as Daniel settled Mia into the car seat the driver had buckled in. Mia roused enough to protest, then gave in when the belt clicked. Daniel eased himself into the back seat beside her. "Mr. Reyes," Catherine said just before he closed the door. He looked up. "I hope your daughter sleeps well tonight," he said. "I hope yours does too," she answered. He nodded once, then pulled the door shut. The car eased away from the curb headlights, washing across the hospital facade before turning toward the street. Catherine stood on the sidewalk until the taillights disappeared around the corner. The automatic doors behind her opened and closed, gusts of warm air at her back. Her heels were on concrete now, not polished marble. The sound they made as she turned to go back inside felt less certain than usual. The hospital cafeteria was closing when Catherine finally remembered she had not eaten all day. She stared at the warming trays, at the congealed edges of lasagna and the last few fries under a heat lamp, and picked up a cup of yogurt instead. The cashier gave her a look that was equal parts pity and habit. She carried the yogurt back to the ICU, opened it, and then forgot it on the small table by Sophie's bed. Night thickened outside the windows. The city lights sharpened. Inside, the monitors by Sophie's head glowed green and amber, a quiet constellation around her. Sophie's chest rose and fell under the blanket. There were tubes and wires and a cuff around her arm, but color had returned to her skin. Her lips were no longer gray at the edges. The transfusion had done what it was supposed to do. Catherine sat in the chair and watched her daughter sleep. Her own eyes burned, but each time they closed for more than a heartbeat, she jerked awake, afraid she might miss a change in the rhythm of the monitor. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. It had been vibrating on and off since afternoon, a trapped insect on the small shelf by the window. She picked it up without checking the screen. Yes. Her assistant's voice came through hushed, but tight. Ms. Lowell, I am sorry to bother you. The board chair has called an emergency meeting for 9 in the morning. He asked that you be there in person. Catherine pinched the bridge of her nose. Harold knows where I am, she said. He has my messages. He does, the assistant said. He mentioned the missed investor presentation. He said the timing is unfortunate, but the meeting is mandatory. Unfortunate. The word hung in the air. Tell him I will be there, she said. She hung up before her assistant could say anything else. The rest of the night blurred. A nurse came in at intervals, checked vitals, adjusted a drip. A respiratory therapist listened to Sophie's lungs and nodded. At some point in the dark, Catherine's chin dropped to her chest. She woke with a small start and an ache in her neck. By 7 in the morning, a pale wash of light crept through the high windows of the ICU. A fresh coffee appeared in her hand, pressed there by a nurse with kind eyes. You should go, the nurse said. We will call if anything changes, I promise. Catherine looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she leaned down, pressed her mouth to Sophie's forehead, and breathed in the warm, faintly antiseptic scent of her skin. I have to go scare some old men in suits, she whispered. You keep resting. Sophie slept on, oblivious. Catherine straightened, smoothed her wrinkled blouse as best she could, and pulled on her navy coat. The fabric had creases from where she had sat hunched in the chair for hours. She did not have a spare. In the restroom near the ICU, she splashed water on her face and patted it dry with paper towels. The mirror showed a woman who had not slept with shadows under her eyes and mascara smudged at the corners. She reined in her hair with an elastic from her pocket and called it good enough. The driver she had called the night before was waiting at the main entrance, the company sedan idling at the curb. He opened the rear door. She slid in the leather cold against the back of her legs. The city on the way to Lowell Dynamics looked different at 8:30 in the morning after a night in the ICU. School children with backpacks trudged toward crosswalks. People in business casual clustered around coffee carts. A woman in a parka walked a dog that shook rain off its coat at every corner. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. 3 new emails from Harold, 2 from the investor relations team, 1 from the press office already worrying about rumors. She put the phone face down on the seat beside her. The Lowell Dynamics tower rose out of the wet streets, all glass and angles. From the car window, she could see the reflection of the sky on its surface, a pale gray shield that gave nothing away of what was inside. The lobby hummed with the start of a workday. Employees moved through security with ID badges held up. A receptionist answered phones with a practiced, bright tone. The scent of espresso drifted from the cafe. Catherine's heels clicked across the stone as they always did. Heads turned instinctively, then looked away when they saw her expression. She took the elevator straight to the top floor. The boardroom was long and narrow, lined on one side with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. The table was polished wood, dark and sleek. At the far end, the company logo was etched into frosted glass. 12 leather chairs ringed the table, all but one occupied. Harold Weston sat at the head of the table. He wore the same dark suit he always wore, tie knotted, in the same careful way. His white hair was combed straight back. His hands were folded on the table, fingers intertwined. The other board members turned as she entered. Some faces were familiar allies. Some had always been more interested in quarterly returns than people. Thank you for joining us, Catherine, Harold said. His tone was formal. Please sit. She took her usual seat near the middle of the long side of the table. The leather whispered under her as she sat. She placed her phone screen down by her folder and laid her hands flat on the wood. We are all glad to hear your daughter is recovering, Harold said. You have our sympathies. However, there are concerns we need to address. There it was, laid out in 2 sentences. Sympathy in one hand, concern in the other. She inclined her head once. Go ahead, she said. The investor presentation yesterday was critical, Harold said. We had representatives from 2 of our largest institutional shareholders present. When you left abruptly without explanation, it raised questions about your commitment to the company and its obligations. I informed the team there was a family emergency, she said. You left Robert to handle questions he was not prepared to answer, another board member said. There was confusion. The presentation lacked closure. Catherine looked at the speaker, a woman whose main focus had always been cost reduction. My daughter was in surgery, Catherine said. She was bleeding internally. When I walked into the operating floor, a surgeon told me she might not survive without blood that we did not have. I am sorry that Robert was uncomfortable for an hour. I am not sorry I left. A silence settled over the table. Someone shifted in a chair. A pen clicked once. We are not asking you to apologize for caring about your child, Harold said. His voice softened, then hardened again. We are asking how you intend to reassure our investors that leadership will not be absent at key moments. Catherine let her eyes travel around the table, meeting each pair in turn. For 15 years, I have given this company almost every waking hour, she said. I have missed recitals, birthdays, first days of school. I flew back from my mother's funeral early to attend a product launch. She saw a few of them glance away. They knew her schedule. They had praised her for it. Yesterday, a 7-year-old girl lay on a table at Harborview with her blood pressure dropping. She continued. They called a code red for O negative blood. There was none left. A man at that hospital, a man who works in our building cleaning our floors, answered that call within minutes. He let them take so much of his blood that he could barely stand afterward. She said it plainly without embellishment. The picture was vivid enough on its own. Who is this man? One of the board members asked. His name is Daniel Reyes, she said. He is on our facilities staff. Before that, he was an engineer. He left that job to care for his wife when she had cancer. After she died, he took whatever work he could find that would let him support their daughter and still take her to her cardiology appointments. The room shifted. Some faces showed skepticism, others something more guarded. And how is this relevant to the board? Harold asked. Because the girl on that table was my daughter, Catherine said, and the man giving his blood to save her was the same man I humiliated yesterday morning in the lobby over a cleaning cart near the executive elevator. The sentence hung between them. In the glass behind Harold, her reflection stared back at her, between the letters of the company name. The faint ghost of a woman in a wrinkled blouse hair, pulled back in haste, shoulders set in a way that felt new. I did not know his story when I did it, she said. That is the point. I did not bother to know. I have built a culture here that rewards efficiency and punishes inconvenience. I have let that seep into how I see people. She folded her hands, then unfolded them palms flat again. Our investors are asking if I have my priorities straight, she continued. The answer is that for too long I have not. Yesterday made that impossible to ignore. Harold leaned back in his chair. And your intention now? He said. My intention is to change what this company values, at least in the parts I control, she said. We have 4,000 employees. Many of them have families. Some are single parents. Some work jobs that pay just enough to keep them scared. They come in every day and keep this place running, and we treat them as line items. That is an oversimplification, the cost-focused board member said. We provide competitive compensation packages. For some, Catherine said, not for all. We offer premium benefits to those on the upper floors, while the people scrubbing the bathrooms patch together coverage from 2 part-time jobs. Numbers she had memorized for the last compensation review rose in her mind. Insurance eligibility thresholds, turnover rates in facilities and support roles. She brought them out now, not on slides, but in sentences. I wanted to create a program for parents in this company, she said, especially single parents. Comprehensive health coverage that includes their children. Flexible hours that actually work with daycare schedules, emergency funds for medical crises, access to mental health support. You are talking about a significant cost increase, the investor-friendly member said. Shareholders. She cut him off with a look she usually reserved for underperforming executives. I am talking about stabilizing the people who stabilize us, she said. The ones who show up when the servers crash and when the toilets overflow. The ones like Daniel who have skills we waste because we do not see past their uniforms. Harold tapped one finger against the table. Will this satisfy investors, he asked, telling them we are increasing our operating expenses. We can frame it as risk mitigation, she said. Lower turnover, higher productivity, better retention of experienced staff, fewer accidents. There are numbers to support all of that. She did not mention the other half of it, the part that had nothing to do with metrics. She suspected most of them would not know what to do with it. I am not here to make you feel guilty, she said. I am here to tell you that I am going to do this. If you want a leader who will ignore what she saw yesterday, you should replace me. If you want one who understands that a company is only as strong as the people you are not looking at, then back me. The room went very still. The board members exchanged looks, the silent language of shared risk. Harold watched her weighing the way he had weighed acquisitions and divestitures for decades. "You put us in a difficult position," he said eventually. "I know," she said. "You left investors yesterday," he said. "I did," she said. "I would do it again." The honesty of it settled between them like a dropped stone. Harold exhaled long and slow. "Draft a proposal," he said, "with real numbers. Present it at the next meeting. We will consider it." It was more than she had expected, less than she wanted. For now, it was enough. "Thank you," she said. The meeting shifted to other agenda items, market updates, patent filings. There were questions she usually would have dominated. She answered when asked, concise and clear, then let the conversations move on. Her phone buzzed once. She glanced down. A message from the nurse at Harborview. "Sophie awake, asking for you." The letters blurred for a second. She blinked them clear. "Unless there is anything else that cannot wait," she said, cutting into a discussion about an upcoming conference. "I need to return to the hospital." No one stopped her. She left the boardroom and walked past the line of framed photographs on the wall. Founders, award ceremonies, new product launches. In each one she stood in the center smiling. The glass over the frames caught the light and threw back her current reflection, smaller and less sure. In the elevator down to the lobby, she pressed the button and watched the doors slide shut. Her face in the metal panel looked pale, but there was something different in the set of her mouth. On the ground floor, employees stepped aside to let her pass. She moved through the polished lobby she had once insisted be flawless and thought of the man who had polished it sitting in a hospital waiting area with a bandage on his arm and his daughter asleep against him. She pushed through the glass doors into the damp air outside and headed back toward the car, toward the hospital, toward the small girl who was finally awake and waiting. The halls of Harborview felt different on the way back up. Morning had tilted into afternoon. The overhead lights still hummed, but sunlight pushed through the high windows, now turning the floor near them a softer color. Visitors carried paper cups of coffee cradled in both hands. A child in pajamas rolled an IV pole decorated with stickers. Catherine stepped out of the elevator onto the pediatric floor and moved toward the ICU. Her heels hit the linoleum in a slower rhythm than usual. At Sophie's doorway, she paused. The monitors still stood guard, quiet now, their lights steady. Sophie lay propped slightly higher on the bed, a pale blue blanket over her legs. Her hair was brushed back from her face. Someone had clipped it behind her ear with a small plastic barrette from the hospital supply, translucent and shaped like a flower. Her eyes were open. "Mom," she said, voice rough from the tube that had been in her throat earlier. "You took forever." The tightness in Catherine's chest snapped. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and clasped her daughter's hand, careful of the IV line. "I had to go talk to some people who needed reminding about what matters," she said. Sophie studied her, then seemed to decide this was acceptable. "Dr. Henley said I am doing really good," Sophie said. "He said there was a problem inside my belly, and they fixed it, and also that I got superhero blood." Catherine felt her mouth twitch. "Is that what he called it?" she asked. "He said a man came and gave me his blood," Sophie said. Her brow furrowed a little. "Like a donation. Like when we take clothes we do not need any more to the place with the blue bins. Only it was not clothes, it was blood." "Something like that," Catherine said. "He volunteered to help when they needed him." "I want to say thank you," Sophie said. "You will," Catherine said, "if he is willing to meet you." Sophie nodded solemnly, as if this were a contract. "I told Nurse Sarah that when I am better I can draw him a picture," she said, "of a heart, with a cape." Catherine squeezed her hand gently. "He would probably like that," she said. There was a soft knock on the doorframe. Catherine turned. Nurse Sarah stood there, a folder tucked under one arm. "Sorry to interrupt," she said. "I thought you would want to know that Mr. Reyes is here. He brought his daughter for her follow-up, and he asked about Sophie. I told him she was awake." Catherine straightened. "He is on this floor?" she asked. "In the waiting area, by the vending machines," the nurse said. "He said his daughter wanted to make sure Sophie was okay." Sophie perked up. "Is that him?" she asked. "The blood man." Catherine looked from the nurse to her daughter, then back. "Could you ask him if he and his daughter would like to come in?" she said. "If Sophie gets tired, we will cut it short." "Of course," Sarah said. She stepped away. The sounds of the unit filled the gap she left. A cart rolling somewhere. A quiet chime from another room. Sophie shifted her head on the pillow. "Does he work with you?" she asked. "Like meetings and stuff?" Catherine considered her answer. "He works in the same building," she said. "He makes sure the building stays clean and working. He has an important job." "Cleaning is important," Sophie said. "If they did not clean in here, it would be gross." "Yes," Catherine said. "It would." A minute later, soft footsteps approached. Nurse Sarah appeared again this time, with Daniel just behind her in the doorway. Mia stood slightly in front of him, her hand tight around the edge of a piece of construction paper. For a second, no one moved. Daniel's face held the careful expression of someone entering a space that is not quite theirs. His shoulders were hunched as if ready to apologize for taking up room. He had changed into a clean shirt, but the faint impression of adhesive still marked the inside of his elbow. Mia's gaze flicked around the room, taking in the monitors, the wires, the way Sophie's arm lay with the IV taped to it. Her own hand clutched the drawing so firmly the paper bent. Catherine stepped aside, one hand lifting in a small invitation. "Please," she said, "come in." Daniel nodded once and took a few steps into the room. Mia followed her sneakers, making almost no sound on the floor. "This is my daughter Mia," Daniel said. She insisted. Mia moved closer to the bed, then stopped when she reached the rail. Up close, Sophie looked more fragile, the bandage on her arm, the pale lines of her face. But her eyes were bright. "Hi," Sophie said. "I am Sophie." "I know," Mia said, then colored. "They said." Mia held out the construction paper. The drawing on it was crowded, as if she had tried to fit too much onto the space. A big red heart took up most of the center. Two smaller figures stood on either side of it, stick legs and round heads, hands joined. Above them in uneven letters she had written, "Thank you for staying." "I made this," Mia said, "for you." Sophie took the paper with her free hand. The IV line tugged slightly. Catherine adjusted it. "It is really good," Sophie said. "Is that a heart?" "Yes," Mia said. "And that is you, and that is me, because my dad gave you some of his heart's juice." Daniel made a quiet sound in his throat that might have been a laugh. "Simplified," he said. "I like it," Sophie said. "I am going to put it on the wall when I do not have to be attached to everything." The two girls fell into conversation quickly in the way children often did. Sophie showed Mia the buttons on the bed that made it raise and lower a little. Mia showed Sophie how Bear could sit on the rail and not fall if you balanced him just right. The monitors beeped on steady. Catherine stepped back toward Daniel. They stood near the window a few feet apart, watching the scene at the bed. "Thank you for coming," she said, again. "Mia would not let it go," he said. "She has been asking about your daughter since yesterday." "Mia has a good sense of follow-through," Catherine said. "She gets that from her mother," Daniel said. His voice softened on the last word. They stood without speaking for a moment. The light from the window reflected off the glass picture frame of a generic landscape on the wall and threw a faint square of brightness between them. "I heard about the meeting this morning," Daniel said. "News travels fast in buildings with too many vents." "Of course it does," Catherine said. "How much did it mutate by the time it reached your floor?" "Something about you walking out on rich people to yell at other rich people," he said. "Something about programs. People like me." It was a messy summary. She huffed a small breath that was almost a laugh. "That is not entirely inaccurate," she said. She watched Mia and Sophie for another beat. If she looked directly at Daniel while saying what she was about to say, she might stumble. "I want to start something at Lowell," she said. "A program for parents who are doing this the way you are doing this. Alone more than they should be, with fewer safety nets than the company could provide." He turned his head toward her slightly. "That is generous," he said slowly. The word held a cautious edge. "It is overdue," she said. She laid out the basics as she saw them: expanded health coverage for hourly staff that included their children, flexible scheduling, a fund for emergency medical expenses, better access to information about resources. She spoke plainly without dressing it in too much corporate language. "I do not want it to be a press release," she said. "I do not want glossy brochures and no substance. I want it to work. Which means I need someone who knows what it feels like when it does not, to tell me when my shiny ideas are useless." He took that in. His jaw tightened once and released. "You have hundreds of employees in that position," he said. "Janitors, cafeteria workers, reception. You could ask any of them." "I could," she said, "and I will if they are willing. But you are the reason I am seeing it at all. Your face is the one I cannot unsee when I think about how this company operates. You are an engineer, a parent, a person who knows how systems break in slow, ordinary ways." He tasted the word engineer on the back of his tongue. It had been a long time since someone had said it to him, as part of who he was and not who he had been. "What are you asking?" he said. "I am asking you to consult," she said, formally, part-time at first, paid, with full benefits for you and Mia. Help design the program. Sit in the room when policies are discussed. Tell me when we are getting it wrong." He looked at her fully for the first time since she had walked into the room. Her face was tired, the skin under her eyes bruised with lack of sleep. She did not look like a woman making a pitch from a stage. She looked like someone who had been cracked open and had not figured out yet how to put herself back together. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you have been on both sides," she said. "You have sat in meeting rooms as an engineer, and you have pushed a cleaning cart past those rooms as staff. You know what it costs to fall and what it takes to keep going at the bottom." He glanced at Mia now, laughing quietly, as Sophie tried to teach Bear how to wave without falling over. "It would mean more hours away from her," he said. "It could mean fewer later," Catherine said, "if it leads to a role that uses everything you know instead of only part of it." He did not answer immediately. His mind ran through the practical pieces. 2 jobs, 1 janitorial, 1 consulting. The fatigue already etched into his bones. The possibility of dropping one if the other became solid enough to stand on. "You understand that if I do this," he said finally, "I am not going to be polite when I tell you something is broken." "I am counting on that," she said. "And if this turns into a photo opportunity," he said, "a poster of the generous company helping the poor janitor, I am out." Her mouth curved without humor. "I have had enough of posters lately," she said. "I am not interested in being the hero of this story. Not when I was part of the problem for so long." He nodded slowly. "Then we can try," he said, "with conditions." "Name them," she said. "Real authority in the room," he said. "Not just a token chair at the edge. Access to information about what we can actually spend. And when I bring you stories from people downstairs, you listen, even if they make us both uncomfortable." "Agreed," she said. He studied her one more beat, as if searching for the gap between what she said and what she might do. "Then yes," he said, "I will help." At the bed, Mia and Sophie had moved on to comparing scars. Mia traced the outline of the small, pale line on her chest from an earlier procedure. Sophie lifted the edge of her blanket to peek at the bandage on her abdomen. "Mine looks like a line," Sophie said. "Mine looks like a comma," Mia said. "They are like secret punctuation," Sophie said. The monitor continued to beep, steady and indifferent to grammar. Catherine watched the 2 girls, their heads bent together, dark hair, and liked the cords and tubes draped around them like vines that would one day be removed. "She likes Mia," Sophie said later, when the visitors had left and the room had gone quiet again. "Mia likes her too," Daniel had said in the hallway, when they parted, Mia leaning against his side. "Kids are better at this than we are." Now, in the small pause between the soft sounds of the ICU, Catherine stood by the window and looked out at the glass and steel of the city. For the first time in a long while, she let herself imagine the building she worked in, filling with something sturdier than polished floors and glowing screens. Behind her, Sophie sighed in her sleep, and the monitor traced the sound in quiet green lines. 6 weeks later, the lobby of Lowell Dynamics did not look quite the same. The stone floor still shone. The windows still rose 2 stories high, reflecting the sky and the city outside. The logo still hung over the reception desk, white letters on clear glass. But there was a small stage set up near the executive elevators, a low platform with a simple podium. Rows of folding chairs faced it. Some were already filled. Others waited for people who were still trailing in from different floors. For once the crowd was a mix. Engineers in hoodies, designers in dark sweaters, receptionists in neat blouses, cafeteria staff in polo shirts, facilities workers in blue uniforms like Daniel's. The security guard Mendel stood near the back off-duty for the hour, arms loose at his sides instead of folded. Near the front, Mia sat on a chair with her legs swinging sneakers, not quite reaching the floor. Beside her, Sophie fidgeted with a hospital bracelet she had kept as a souvenir, the plastic circle clacking softly against her thumb. Bear rested on Mia's lap, wearing a ribbon Sophie had insisted on tying around his neck. Banners hung on either side of the stage. The design team had kept them simple. No smiling stock photos, just the company name, and beneath it in smaller letters the title of the new program. Lowell Reyes Family Initiative. Catherine had wanted to leave her own name off. Daniel had argued otherwise. "If your name is on it," he had said at one planning meeting, "it is harder to shove it into a drawer when the budget gets tight." Now, as she stood behind the side curtain they had improvised from a folding partition, she smoothed the front of her jacket and eyed the lettering one more time. Harold waited near the front row, along with a few board members. They did not entirely blend in, but they looked less out of place than she would have expected. One of them checked her phone, then put it away when she saw Catherine looking. Daniel stood near the edge of the stage steps off to one side. He wore the same dark pants he used for his maintenance shifts, but he had traded the uniform shirt for a plain white button-down. It made him look more like the engineer he had once been, though the calluses on his hands told both stories. Ready? Catherine asked. Not even a little, he said. Good, she said. Me neither. She stepped out first. The low murmur in the lobby dipped, then quieted as people noticed her. The microphone picked up a faint buzz and then settled. Thank you for coming, she said. Her voice echoed lightly against the stone and glass. She watched it land. Faces tipped up toward her, some curious, some wary, some openly skeptical. You all have your own reasons for being in this room, she said. Work, courtesy. Maybe someone promised there would be donuts afterward. A ripple of small laughter moved through the crowd, easing the tightness in her shoulders. I asked for this gathering because something happened in another building in this city, she said. Not here, at Harborview Children's Hospital. She did not tell the whole story again. Most people had heard some version by now. Instead, she sketched it in quick strokes. A child in surgery, a blood shortage, a call over the intercom. A member of our staff heard that call while he was waiting for his own daughter's appointment, she said. He went to the blood center and offered to help. He gave more than is usually asked. It was not without risk to him. He did it anyway. She let that sit for a beat. That child was my daughter, she said. The man was Daniel Reyes. Heads turned toward him. Daniel shifted his weight and kept his eyes on a fixed point at the back wall. I am not telling you this to embarrass him, she said. I am telling you because it forced me to see something I had been ignoring. That there are people in this company carrying burdens I never accounted for. People who make it possible for us to do what we do upstairs while they worry about medical bills, child care, and shifts that do not line up with the school day. Her gaze moved over the uniforms, the name badges. She thought of the stories she had heard over the last few weeks in conference rooms that had never hosted those voices before. A single father in shipping trying to manage dialysis appointments for his mother. A cafeteria worker covering her sister's rent. A receptionist who hid her panic attacks in the restroom between calls. We cannot fix everything, she said, but we can stop pretending that these things are not part of our work. She gestured to the banner. The Lowell Reyes Family Initiative is a start, she said. It provides full health coverage for dependents to all full-time staff, regardless of title. It creates an emergency fund for medical crises. It sets up flexible scheduling options for parents and caregivers in roles that have never had that choice before. It gives employees access to real information about resources outside these walls, not just a pamphlet no one explains. She did not quote numbers. Those would come later in documents and emails. Right now, she wanted faces, not charts. This program exists because one of our own reminded me with his actions that the floor in this lobby is not the only thing that needs attention, she said. She turned toward Daniel. Daniel, she said, would you join me? He knew it was coming, but his stomach still tightened. Mia caught his eye and gave him both thumbs up, face earnest. Sophie made a little shooing motion with her hands. He climbed the steps to the stage. The microphone was a little too high. When he stood beside Catherine, she adjusted it down for him. The small, practical gesture steadied him more than any speech could have. He looked out at the rows of chairs, at Malik near the back, leaning slightly on his cart, at Mendel, at Evan from Ott, who raised his coffee cup in a silent toast, at a woman in cafeteria whites, who he had seen every morning for years without ever exchanging more than a hello. I am not a public speaker, Daniel said. The microphone amplified the low roughness of his voice. A few people laughed. The sound was gentle, not mocking. I am more comfortable fixing things in rooms nobody sees, he said. Machines, leaks, the vending machine on 7 that eats coins. Evan groaned theatrically in the third row. The room laughed again louder this time. But some problems do not sit still while you get your tools, Daniel said. They walk around, they go to doctor appointments, they stay up at night, they eat the last of the cereal and leave the box in the cabinet. There was a small cheer from the direction of the daycare staff. I am a single father, he said simply. My daughter has a heart condition. Not a dramatic one, not all the time, but enough that we know the names of the nurses on the pediatric floor at Harborview, enough that we cannot skip checkups. He glanced down at Mia. She sat very straight, chin lifted. When my wife got sick, I left a job that paid well and made sense on paper, he said. I took one that let me be where I needed to be, at home, at the hospital, in waiting rooms. I know there are people in this company who have made choices like that quietly, without anyone upstairs noticing. He let his hand rest on the podium for balance. He did not grip it. This program is not charity, he said. It is acknowledgement. That people in every role here have lives that do not stay at the door when they badged in. That supporting them is not extra. It is part of doing our own jobs. His eyes met Catherine's for sestisopistone. As Catherine's for a second, then moved back to the crowd. My hope is that this makes things a little less hard for someone who is sitting at their kitchen table right now, looking at bills and bus schedules and a calendar full of appointments, wondering what they can drop without breaking everything. He cleared his throat. I will be working with Catherine and anyone else who wants to help to make sure this does not turn into a nice sign and nothing underneath, he said. If you have ideas or stories, or if a policy that looks good on the slide is making your life worse in practice, come tell me. Or tell your manager or HR or whoever you trust. The point is that someone listens. He stepped back from the microphone. The lobby was quiet for a heartbeat, then another. Then the sound came, not explosive, but solid. Applause. The kind that did not peak too early. Hands clapping palms against palms. The sound bouncing off glass and stone. Mia cupped her hands around her mouth. "That is my dad," she yelled. Laughter rolled through the room. The applause grew louder. Later, after the stage had been dismantled, and the banners rolled up for reuse after the donuts and fruit trays had been picked clean, and people had drifted back to their departments with new conversations started, the lobby looked almost normal again. Almost. There were new posters on the staff bulletin board now. Not glossy faces. Just clear language about benefits, about application forms, about dates. There was a line at the HR kiosk that had never been there before. Outside, the sky had cleared. 3 months after the surgery, and the board meeting, and the launch, winter settled over the city. On a Saturday afternoon, Catherine and Sophie walked into Harborview Children's Hospital, not in a rush, but at an ordinary pace. Sophie wore a knit hat with a pom-pom that bounced when she moved. Her gait was careful but no longer weak. At the registration desk, the clerk smiled at them. "Final follow-up," she said, seeing the note. "That is the plan," Catherine said. On the other side of the waiting room, Daniel and Mia sat together. Mia's feet swung though they reached closer to the floor now. She wore a hoodie with a cartoon heart on it, a gift from Sophie. Mia spotted them first. "Sophie," she called, waving her whole arm. Sophie grinned and waved back. The two girls crossed the room and collided in the middle with the gentle thud of kids who had been told not to run and had compromised with a fast walk. "You look less like a ghost," Mia said. "You look taller," Sophie answered. "We have to see Dr. Chen," Mia said. "He is going to say stable again. I can tell." "Stable is his favorite word," Sophie said. Daniel and Catherine exchanged a look over their daughters' heads. There was something easy in it now. "You want to sit together?" Daniel asked. "One less stranger to make small talk with." "I would appreciate that," Catherine said. They settled into the row of chairs. Daniel on one end, then Mia, then Sophie, then Catherine. A crooked row of legs and backpacks and crossed arms. The nurse called Sophie's name first. She and Catherine disappeared through the door. 10 minutes later, they were back. Dr. Chen followed, smiling. "She is doing very well," he said. "No signs of lasting damage. She may have a scar, but I suspect she will enjoy showing it off." "I already do," Sophie said. Next, it was Mia's turn. She hopped off the chair and marched toward the exam rooms like someone heading to a stage. Back in the hall afterward, Dr. Chen made a note in her chart and closed it with a satisfied tap. "Stable," he said, again. Mia gave him a look. "You need a new word," she told him. "It is an excellent word," he said. "It leaves room for many good things." They all ended up in the small cafe on the ground floor afterward. The girls claimed a table by the window and spread out coloring sheets and crayons. Outside, fine flakes of snow had started to drift down, catching in the air above the sidewalk before settling in a thin, bright dusting. "They are going to want to go out there," Daniel said, watching Mia's eyes track the flakes. "They will not be deterred by the concept of cold," Catherine said, "or by doctors who say not to overdo it." "Within reason," Daniel said. They drank coffee in paper cups. The warmth seeped into their hands. The conversation moved in fits and starts. Work, school, the way Mia had tried to explain fractions to Daniel the night before, and ended up schooling him on a new method. "I put the first draft of the initiative report on your desk," Daniel said. "There are some sections that will make finance uncomfortable." "Good," Catherine said. "Finance should be uncomfortable from time to time." "They are worried about abuse," he said. "People faking need." "Some will," she said. "Most will not. We write it in a way that assumes people are trying, not cheating." He inclined his head. "That is in there," he said. They fell quiet for a moment, watching the girls press their noses to the glass. "You know," Catherine said, "I've been called many things in my career. Difficult, demanding, strategic, never recalibrated." "That was about the machines," Daniel said, "and people. Some systems only need a small adjustment. Others need a complete overhaul. Which one am I? She asked. Ask me in a year, he said. She laughed, surprised at how easy it came out. At the window, Sophie turned around. Can we go out? She asked. Just for a minute. We want to see if the snow makes a sound. It does not make a sound, Mia said. We have to check. Daniel and Catherine looked at each other. A tiny shrug passed between them in agreement. Coats zipped, Daniel said. Hats on, Catherine added. A few minutes later, they stepped out through the side door. The air hit their faces clean and sharp. The snow was coming down a little thicker now, soft pinpricks on skin. It dusted the shoulders of their coats, settled on hair, melted on warm cheeks. The girls ran ahead a few steps, then slowed when both adults said their names at the same time. They compromised with a slow spin, arms out. It is quiet, Mia said, tilting her head back, mouth open to catch flakes on her tongue. It is like the sky is whispering, Sophie said. Their boots left small prints on the thin layer of white. The sound of their footsteps was soft, more a hush than a tap. Daniel and Catherine walked side by side behind them. Their strides did not quite match, but the distance between them was easy to close when one or the other adjusted half a pace. From inside the cafe, through the glass, they were four shapes against the gray, two taller, two small, the outline of a bear and one set of arms. If someone had been sitting with a cooling coffee at a corner table looking out, they might have seen them and thought they were a family. Outside, snow gathered in the grooves of the concrete. The city sounds were muted. Somewhere deep in the building behind them, machines hummed and monitors kept time with quiet beeps. Out here, the only rhythm was the scuff of feet and the shared sound of breath in cold air. Mia reached back without looking and caught her father's hand. On the other side, Sophie did the same with her mother. For a heartbeat, they all moved together, linked the space between them, crossed by small, steady grips. Then the girls laughed at something only they heard and pulled their parents forward into the light fall of snow. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.